Recently, I've had this itch to rewatch The Walking Dead, as it's one of my favorite TV shows, but in my pursuit of finding a good place to watch it, I stumbled across a different zombie-related story, but not something so straightforward. It's called Infestation, and it's a comic crossover event published by IDW from early to mid 2011 that not only features zombies, but a number of incredibly popular brands that they own the publishing rights to at the time. It's honestly one of the stranger comic event crossover things I've come across, and especially not one I've really ever heard talked about before. So I'm here today to explore this lesser known comic series with you, because chances are this has some stories featuring a few of your favorite characters that you've just never heard about before. Speaking of things you've probably never heard of before, this crossover event actually begins with a mini crossover between two of IDW's original comic series, titled CVO, Covert Vampiric Operations, which is a series about a secret intelligence group run by vampires to handle supernatural conflicts, and another series called Zombies vs. Robots, which is about zombies fighting robots. While I was digging deeper for this video, I actually found it quite hard to get my hands on any CVO comics, as there are hardly any reviews for it online, and the ones that do exist are mostly negative, and it doesn't even show up on IDW's website. It's kind of just fallen into obscurity. But I will say, from what I have looked into about Zombies vs. Robots, I actually did like how the story makes note of the similarities to human beings and the nature of humans, and I also thought the art from Ashley Wood was really good. And you can find it on Image Comics website, so I guess the publishing rights changed around. Honestly, I think this event was as much a setup for an IDW Comics universe as it was crossing over with other popular things, but it's okay. I think I'll have to look into these comics in the future, but for now, I'm just focused on this crossover event here. And the way that they do crossover is due to a nifty interdimensional portal. That's always an easy way to have multiverse stuff, just a portal appears, in which the secret agent vampires have to fight off the zombies, but one of the vampires named Britt, she gets bit, becoming a vampire zombie, who then spreads the zombie hive mind through more dimensions and more portals to popular brands you actually have heard of. Those zombies, robots, and vampires I mentioned are now stepping into the worlds of popular franchises, including G.I. Joe, Transformers, Star Trek, Ghostbusters, and Pocket God? I had to look this one up, but yeah, Pocket God is just some random mobile game from 2009 that I guess IDW had the publishing rights to. It kind of puts into perspective this entire series, because I think they just wanted to use every popular brand at their disposal to not only have them face off against zombies, but help promote their original comic series as well. One of the things I find interesting about this crossover, as random as this is that these aren't isolated stories. They actually continue from where these comics left off and were already going, and are referenced a bit later on after these stories conclude. For instance, the Transformers story takes place during the Heart of Darkness storyline, while the Ghostbusters story takes place shortly after the 2009 video game that most people probably haven't heard about either. Now, while characters from CVO and Zombies vs. Robots do cross over in here, mainly Britt, who is the super vampire zombie bad guy, they show up in all these different stories. These popular franchises don't actually cross over with each other. I cannot for the life of me understand why they wouldn't take the opportunity to capitalize on the kinds of crossovers everyone would want to see. This feels like a massive missed opportunity that, honestly, it just sours the whole thing in my eyes. But at the end of the day, if you just want to read some stories about G.I. Joe, Transformers, Star Trek, Ghostbusters, and even Pocket God facing off against zombie hordes, that's something unique, right? You never really see these franchises dive into the zombie genre, so I think at the very least, the premise is interesting. I also think it's worth noting that this was just before the big zombie media boom. Now, while things like the Walking Dead comic series was already super popular, and the TV show I mentioned at the start that I wanted to rewatch, that had just taken off like a year before, this was before the show really took off, or before we saw things like The Last of Us video game to really hammer home just how popular zombies would be at the time. I wonder if this series had come out like a year later, if it would be something incredibly well known instead of something I have heard practically no one talk about ever. Because honestly, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Star Trek, Ghostbusters, and yes, even Pocket God, all of them respectively fighting their own, zombie hordes and their own zombie stories, should be way more popular than it is, regardless of the quality it ended up having here. Now, while I might look at all of this absurdity and critique some of its shortcomings, part of me can't help but smile at just how unabashedly goofy it all is. Vampire secret agents being attacked by zombies from a world overrun with robots too, then a super vampire zombie traveling to all these random popular franchises and they have to fight off zombies as well. I mean, it's all just so ridiculous and just kind of surface level, but it's fun. It's fun, and sometimes stories can just be fun, but more importantly, they can be whatever you want them to be. We can all sit here and talk about rules and what makes something good or bad, but as long as someone has the freedom to create the kind of story they wish to tell, they're expressing themselves to their fullest potential. And I hope I'm saying this in a way that makes sense and not in a way that comes across like I'm trying too hard to sound deep. I just think it's nice to have silly concepts like this because it's fun to have fun, So in conclusion, this is a really weird comic. It takes all these original IDW stories that never took off, mixes it up with a bunch of popular brands that have absolutely nothing to do with each other, and has them all fight off waves of zombies. But for some reason, these brands never actually cross over with each other. And now here I am 15 years later, where somehow a story following some of the most popular franchises ever, fighting arguably the most iconic horror monster ever, is still just sitting here covered in dust. Let me know in the comments if you've ever heard of this story before or read it for yourself, because this was all news to me. If it is news to you though, let me know. Do you like G.I. Joe, Transformers, Star Trek, Ghostbusters, or even that random mobile game Pocket God? Because if you do like any of those really popular franchises that have been around for so long and had so many types of stories and media created about them, this might be an interesting, unheard of story that you'd like to dive into, where they go into a different genre than they've ever really gone into before. As for me, I'm just doing my duty on reporting it all for you here today, keeping it vague so that you have something to discover for yourself. I think there are too many comic book videos on YouTube that just take a comic and fully summarize everything. I'm here to just share something new and interesting with all of you today. This was news to me. This is a really bizarre comic. But anyway, that's going to do it for me. I thought all this was interesting. Share it with anybody else who might find this interesting as well. And I will see you all next time. But until then, take care.